Hey there, welcome back to the Complicated Kids podcast. I'm your host, Gabriele Nicolet. I am a toddler whisperer, a speech therapist, and a parent coach. And today I have Sean McCormick with me. Sean, welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I'm delighted to have you because I already can tell we're going to have a fun conversation all about what actually works for teaching executive function.
hmm
So I'm very excited about that. But before we begin, tell the good people a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Yes. Hey, everyone. Glad to be here. And my name is Sean McCormick. I am a former public school special education teacher. I taught in New York, then at my old high school in California. And about 4.5 years into teaching, I started what I thought was tutoring kids on the side, tutoring special needs students. And that quickly grew into an executive function coaching practice after a lot of neuropsychologists started referring to me saying Sean is the master at helping with executive function skills. So it was interesting because I hadn't heard this phrase too much as getting my master's degree in special education, or even in the teaching system. But as I looked into it, I was like, yes, like helping kids with their planning, organization, self-awareness, time management, all these things. This is what I love more than anything. This is really why I was drawn to special education. So that was about 6 years ago that I made that transition. From there, I started Executive Function Specialists, which is a coaching company for students. After that, I founded the Executive Function Coaching Academy, which trains educators to become executive function coaches. And then about 2 years ago, I co founded Upskill Specialist, which is an adult executive function coaching business. So I just managed those things and try to share what I've learned along the way and meet with awesome people like you, Gabrielle.
So fun. So, okay, we have to define our terms a little bit. So, let's talk about what is executive function. I feel like, and I know we're going to get into this a little bit, like that term gets thrown around as if we all know what we're talking about. And it turns out we don't always. So, what does executive function mean to you, Sean?
So for me, I've come up with this acronym. Executive functioning is using our positive skills, and positive stands for planning, organization, self-awareness, initiation of difficult tasks, time management, or I'll call it time awareness because you can't manage time. It's like bigger than us. So time awareness, inhibition, being able to pull ourselves away from things that attract us, like YouTube when we need to do homework, visualizing outcomes or using our nonverbal working memory, and then E for evaluating priorities. Can we actually, if we have a long term goal, can we evaluate what the best next step is? So that's kind of my more technical definition that I share with parents. I really like how Dr. Russell Barkley described it as executive function is self direction towards a future goal. And I like to add to that definition that the self direction is preceded or follows self awareness. So when we have self awareness, we can self regulate and self direct, but we do initially have to have that level of self awareness of like, who am I? What do I want? And once we have that, then we can self direct. And so those are the definitions that I like to share with people about what executive functioning is.
I love it. I love it. Where do you put the emotional regulation piece?
Yeah, I mean, I think that starts, I place that with the S in the self-awareness. So you can regulate when you're aware that you're upset. Like how common is it to see someone who's really upset and going, "I'm not angry. What are you talking about?" Right? So that self-awareness piece is what I call is connects to that self-regulation. When we can be self-aware, if you're angry or sad, if you're self-aware, you know that the best next step is going to be to acknowledge that and like hold space for it and not stuff it down or project it onto someone else. So, but ultimately, emotional regulation is executive functioning. If we're going to really simplify it, that is what it is. It's the ability to regulate oneself. And my favorite study I like to share on this is the work of Dr. Adele Diamond in her meta-analysis Executive Functions, which was published in 2013. She pulled from a study done in England where they looked at over 1,000 kids who from ages I think 3 to past 30, and the kids who were more able to self-regulate themselves at a young age or who were taught those skills and able to apply them had greater wealth outcomes, less like incarceration outcomes, less violent incidences, like the life outcomes of the people who had better self-regulation skills at a young age predicted their life outcomes in their 30s. So it's just an essential piece. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so funny. Part of the reason I asked the question is because it continues to blow my mind that emotional regulation piece, number one, is so important. Number two is a part of executive function. I just remember being like, wait, what?
Mhm.
Because we talk about study skills and being organized and inhibiting and all of that stuff, and I just find it fascinating. It's a personal thing for me. Uh,
Yeah, it's a good, yeah, and I should probably weave it into that positive. We're gonna do it together right now. The E is evaluating priorities and staying emotionally regulated.
that's
So
what
we've just
I thought you
revised
were
the
going.
definition.
That's what I thought you were going to say, which is part of why I asked you the question. That's funny. Okay, awesome. So, what actually helps people learn these skills?
So in my experience as a teacher and a parent and having coached dozens of students, what I've found is that students have to have what I call, Dr. Russell Barkley calls it like the point of performance. And so he talks about how, I just think he defined it really well. He talks about how we know that executive function skills don't exist when a child or a person is they struggle to self-regulate at the point of performance. So an example might be you have a test coming up, and instead of preparing for the test, you watch YouTube, right? They're overwhelmed with the massiveness of the project, so therefore they cannot inhibit, and they choose to do something distracting, right? And this is not necessarily problematic if it's done on a micro scale, but if it's done across all areas of life where you're avoiding doing things that are connected with basically what's in your best interest, it starts to be a form of self-harm. And so what the way in my mind to teach executive function skills is to help children identify that point of performance where they feel they're lacking skills. Um, the really good research on this is by Dr. John Hattie, who wrote Visible Learning, and he talks about how the number one impactor on student success, the strategy that is like identified as having the biggest impact on student achievement, is what's called estimates of achievement. Like, does the educator or the teacher know how to make proper estimates of achievement? And the estimates of achievement must be done in the student's zone of proximal development. So basically, it has to be like, can we help a student identify where they're struggling and ask for help, or self-regulate to the point where that they can take on that challenge? And so this is why when people say, "Oh, I have a perfect curriculum to teach executive function skills," I really don't think that's the method. It may be helpful, but the real challenge is when the student is faced with something that is out of their zone of proximal development or just on the cusp. How do we help them learn the skills that allow them to manage that difficulty, the thing at the point of performance? So that's my working theory.
Okay, I love this. I want to make this bring it down to a third grade level because
Yeah, that was complex.
no, and it's good because what, and so this is what we're going to do. What I heard you say, and I want you to correct me on this, is there's stuff that's too hard for students. And when
Mhm.
they perceive that something is too hard, they avoid it.
Right.
The goal of an educator should always be, this is true for any adult who works with children, it's true for any people working together. Where are you? Where are we trying to go? And what's the next just right challenge, the next just right thing for you to do? And then the second part of what I think I heard you say is, can we teach the student, the learner, to identify for themselves what that next right challenge is in the direction of where they want to go? Did I hear that correctly?
Totally. Yeah. And that's where there's like the science of it, which is what you just explained. That's the process of identifying the long-term vision, identifying where you are, and then what's the next step. I call that the domino because if you knock that domino over, it releases dopamine. They experience a sense of satisfaction because they're moving towards the vision, even though they're not all the way there. But the art of it is the educator's ability to understand the barrier. And this is where AI will never replace coaches or teachers or parents because the ability to understand the struggle the student experiences is oftentimes nonverbal. It's oftentimes very, you can see it in their body language. It's not something that you could really discern unless you're hyper aware of the cues that the student will exhibit when they are becoming avoidant.
That is what I call the special sauce.
Exactly. The X factor. That's what I call the X
The
factor.
X factor. And it is so this is so interesting. The way that I now understand this, for years I was like, special sauce, you can't teach it. And it turns out you can teach kind of you can teach it. But it is this process of being very observant and curious and open to what's happening at a nonverbal level, and understanding that that has as much, if not more, meaning than what the student is telling you.
Totally.
Right?
Totally.
Like,
They could say
it,
one thing and they mean something completely different.
yeah. And it's
And
kind
that,
of just
yeah,
coming off of them in waves at that point. Like, it really is kind of an energetic
totally.
thing.
It's a vibration, it's a frequency. And that's where, as I help coaches, parents, educators, I tell them like call that into the session. And so one strategy I use for this is I say, I noticed like you put your head down when you started to talk about this. I'm getting the sense that you don't want to do this. Am I off base? So it's like you're inviting something really subtle into the relationship, and that's where anyone working with a kid can, that's the teacher estimates of achievement. The factor that Hattie found had the biggest impact on student achievement is inviting those really subtle things into the space and helping the student feel seen, seeing them, and then helping them, like you said, like what's the next right step or the next appropriate task.
Okay. So I believe you. And what do you say to parents who are like, yeah, but they need to do their homework?
No, I agree. They do. And I would ask them like why, like why are they avoiding it or what, do you have an understanding of that? And um yeah, I mean it's like do we who I don't disagree. Yeah.
Love it.
And
I love
what would the parents next say? What would they say? Like, can you make them do it? I don't know what would their
Well, I do
follow.
think, I mean, and I don't know, the people who find you, I don't know if they're, kind of attuned to the way in which you work. I do find more and more that people are coming to me who are already more attuned to how I do my work, which is a very
Yeah.
relational, very, I'm stepping up to you. I'm asking you to meet me here and we can hang out where you are. And then we'll maybe take a step to the left together, and that's fine. And so if you're listening and that makes no sense, that's okay too. But I don't know. Do your clients come to you and like, and are they
Oh, for
asking
sure.
you
I
to
mean,
fix their
so
kid?
yeah, so my background is in public school special education, and the last environment I worked in was a counseling enriched classroom. So I had kids from coming in from residential treatment. Like the majority of students were, so we had an actual psychologist in the classroom, like with a room built in the room, because these students they were either, they had oftentimes stopped attending school or school had just become too challenging, whatever it might be. So, I mean, that's probably one of my strengths is working with the students who like no one else has been able to serve effectively. Um, and I found working with those students who like everybody was like, this isn't going to work. They have to go to Utah in order to learn. I was able to work with them in their home environment. And this is where I discovered the power of executive functioning because what I did with these students was I said, okay, what's your goal? Like, why are you coming here? Like, I want you to be here, but tell me why you're coming here. And like, oh, I want to like move out of my house. I want a job. I want a car. Like, I want to go to acting school, whatever it might be. And I said, okay, that's awesome. So you want to be an actor, right? You want to do that. Okay. Do you think graduating high school will help you get closer to that goal? And every time they're like, yeah, I got to graduate. I can't like do this if I don't get a diploma or a passing certificate of completion. So it's like, okay, if we're in agreement there, then like, what would be the most important thing we can do in this semester? And they'd be like, well, I got to finish these classes. And I was like, okay. So then if you need to finish this class, like let's reverse engineer getting done to it. And in this school system, we were working on a um a step system. So like if they completed a certain number of steps, like 300 steps, they would finish a class. And so we actually divided those 300 steps by the number of days. I built a little spreadsheet for them so they could see it. And I actually showed them like, here's what you got to do each day. Like you got to do 3 steps in each class each day, and helping students just see the helping them, I call it their light at the end of the tunnel, helping them see that and then see the daily tiny steps that aren't unreasonable or even that scary. When they could see that connection, it was like that was the aha moment for them. Like, oh, I'm not doing this for my parents. I'm not doing this because some teachers want me to do it. I'm doing it because I want to be that actor. I want to be have a car. And so that's always the goal is like, look, parents, we're not going to fix your kid. Hopefully, if this works out, we can help them make progress and start to feel a sense of intrinsic motivation to do this because it connects with their goals. But we have to get alignment around that. And so, what we do in my coaching business is we have what's called a family team meeting. So, that's where we identify the one goal that we're all working towards, which might be like finishing the semester's worth of classes, and then the small steps. And that's another factor which has been incredibly impactful is the collective efficacy. Everybody who's working with the kid has to be aligned around the vision. Because if they're not, you could have what's called splintering, where the parents are like, oh, just do this, just do this. And the kid's like, but I want to do this. And the coach is like this. So you have to have collective efficacy. And so that's the primary and first thing I'll do with any family is we need to be aligned around where the ship is going.
I mean, I just want to call out the way in which, and if you just listened to that and you missed it, go back and listen to the way that Sean just broke this down. You started with number one being like, what is it that you want? Like, I have desires for you, but what do you want? And then that sequence of bringing them through, like you chunked it even in the conversation before you even got to a task that you wanted the student to complete, right? You modeled that stepping down of like, I find it, my favorite thing is when talented people who love what they do embed their work into everything. It's
Hmm.
like all layered in the way that you're addressing the student from the get-go. And by the way, no small part of this is respect and autonomy to the student for having their own desires and needs and wants and
Hmm.
goals. Like you're not
Yeah.
coming in being like, I know what you should do.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that was my experience was this room of 12 to 15 kids on in my room all day who were coming back from residential, all different ages of high school students, all different backgrounds, disability types, races, like everything. It was such a salad bowl of a different, ingredients. And I was like, I banged my head against the wall for a few months. I would stay every day and try to create lesson plans for every kid and try to figure out how. And then I was like, oh, like me trying to do everything is not working. Like I can put so much effort in and it doesn't work. So I started to realize like there's 2 questions I say that will can solve pretty much any problem is why is this so difficult and how can this be easier? And like all major breakthroughs in business, education, come from kind of asking those questions. And so when I realized that I had to turn authority over to them and enroll them, like they couldn't feel like victims in the classroom. They had to have an extreme sense of agency over why they were there. And when you can turn that on in someone, then you're just kind of like you're like the person at the front of the boat where you're just like, okay, keep rowing, let's go. You know what I mean? We're gonna get to the finish line.
Yeah.
So it was a big, it was like it was my intersection in life where my sense of control collided with like the world basically. And I was like, oh, I don't control people, but I can be influential or help guide their thinking.
This is the hardest for anybody who's raising a teenager, respect, because the lesson that you don't have control is never clearer than with teens. I think that's my personal opinion. But also with complicated kids of any age, you learn really quickly that you don't have a lot of control. And the best remedy for that, if that's a word that we want to use, which is kind of a yucky word, but is to get really curious about, okay, why is this so hard for you? How can this be easier? Who are you? Like,
Hmm.
who are you? We don't ask kids that question very much. We just kind of assume that if I gave birth to you, that you're my property at some level, and that
Mm.
I understand you because I made you. That is false. It's not true. And then if we're going into teachers and saying, because this is your student in your classroom, they've been assigned to you, that they are yours. No, thank you. No, that's not how it works.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good to keep that psychological distance, um, as much as possible. But then, yeah, what's the way you can show them love and care without feeling like you have to control them? And there's definitely a fine line, right? Sometimes we think we're loving someone when really we're trying to be controlling. Um, there's probably a deep life lesson there in all relationships.
For sure. And the kids who come to us are the ones we need to learn from. That's for
Yeah.
sure. um, what else do people need to know about executive function and how to teach it? You've got this like student thing dialed in. I feel like you're like, see them, understand them, know them, chunk it. What's something else that people miss, maybe?
Yeah. There's so much, but I think the first part is a quote I share widely. And it's going to sound weird, but I'm just going to say it because I believe in it, which is if it's between disappointing them and disappointing yourself, disappoint them.
Ooh, say more.
And what I mean by that is so many parents, educators, we are really giving people, like we're trying to give and share. And, you know, sometimes that leads to like burnout or exhaustion. We're like, why can't they just do this? I'm trying so hard and make them dinner and, and all this. Um, and I've worked with a lot of educators who like, they've done so much. But they have a hard time giving themselves the same love and grace that they're trying to give to everybody else. And so I've found that the way to transfer your executive functioning is to model it, right? And so that means don't burn yourself out. Um, Figure out like what helps you function better. Because when you are operating on that level, then people are going to be curious and interested, and you embody it and therefore can transfer it and teach it to others more effectively. So, as I shared in that story earlier, I was burning out at the beginning of my teaching career until I realized I can't do everything for these kids, but I can help set the direction and nurture their daily steps. Um, when I started my business, as it grew, I hit some levels of burnout where I was like trying to get employees to do certain things and, do it the way I would do it. And then I was like, you know what? I got to rethink this and I got to make it easier. And now at this point in my life, it's like so much of my life is being the best parent I can, being the best husband I can, being the best speaker, author, whatever I'm doing, but also like really asking myself like, what is getting in the way of me feeling good each day? Because when I feel good, I bring that to my conversations and interactions. And so one practice I would say that has helped me a lot with this is each day I audit my day. And I look back at my day, I write down the things I did, and then I just put a little plus if it gave me energy and a minus if it drained me. And if it drained me, I start to ask myself for that day or that week, what's the pattern with the things that are draining me? When I start to notice those things that are draining me on a consistent level, I then ask myself, is there a way to hire someone or delegate or get an app that could solve this problem for me instead of just doing things I hate over and over? And when I do that, it frees up executive function and it allows me to be of higher service to other people. So I would just encourage you, whoever is listening to this, like take care of yourself, because you can't kind of like what do they say? You can't, there's a quote, it's like don't take a shirt from someone who's not wearing their own shirt. Like make sure you have your shirt. Make sure your tank is filled up. Of course, don't abandon your kids or do anything like that, but like figure out a way to manage your executive functioning.
You are an executive function ninja, let me just say, first of all. But I like what you said about this, right? If it's a choice between disappointing yourself and disappointing someone else, disappoint someone else. And this goes for the kids too. Like we we have the opportunity to model that for them and then allow them to do the same. That requires relinquishing a lot of control.
Hmm. Yeah.
Right. And kind of doing a little bit of a trust fall with kids
Yes.
when they are making different choices from the choices that we might make for them. We can
Hmm.
teach a bunch of skills and that's all fine. And I think, again, your approach makes perfect sense. And then there might be times when they're like, yeah, no, I'm not doing that.
Hmm.
And then what? Right? Like, how are we modeling? Okay, this clearly is a choice between disappointing yourself and disappointing me. You're allowed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, 100%. And that's where I talk about failure as an essential ingredient to development. One of my favorite quotes is failure is feedback, feedback is knowledge, and knowledge is power. So when we allow students to fail and experience natural consequences, that's just like an opportunity, right? It's a really special opportunity and we need to normalize struggle. Like struggle is the root of development, of learning, of we struggled, that's what we are. Humans are living embodiments of struggle. If we try to remove that from the equation for students, then we take away their agency. However, going back to what we talked about, be that person that can help them understand the struggle and take the next step, even when it feels difficult or scary. And so sometimes the struggle is doing something with them, right? Like maybe it's like, hey, your backpack is disorganized. I'm going to physically remove things. You tell me where they go. I'm going to be here with you. And then we're going to move towards you doing it on your own eventually. Right. But that's the challenge. The art and the science of this is it's not doing for them, it's doing with them and then gradually releasing control.
Oh, I love it. Um, Sean McCormick, you are a font of knowledge and, like I said, an EF ninja. If people want to learn
Thank
more
you.
about you, what do they do?
Yeah, the best place to start is my website, efspecialists with an S at the end.com. That's like where you can kind of find a little bit of everything. Um, and then if you're a professional, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active there. So Sean McCormick. Uh, yeah, those are the two places I hang out.
Perfect. Oh my gosh. Lots more to chat about. We're going to pin it here for today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Gabrielle. It was a pleasure.